My graduation party, a night meant for glory, erupted into chaos when my mother Vivian stabbed the air with her voice, sharp as a guillotine, and demanded my future on a platter. "That degree? It's not just yours, it's ours, the family's crown," she bellowed over the thumping music and clinking champagne, her eyes blazing with greed. "So your first paycheck? Fork it over, now." Her hand shot out, regal and ruthless, as if I were her peasant groveling at the throne. The crowd froze, breaths held, waiting for me to bow. Instead, I laughed, a jagged, icy sound that sliced through her arrogance, my lips twisting into a smirk dripping with defiance. "Oh, Vivian," I hissed, every syllable a dagger. "You're in for a surprise. That'll torch your world to ashes." What happened next didn't just rattle the room. It ignited a firestorm that razed everything she'd built, leaving her gasping in the wreckage. While others see graduation as a glittering triumph, a night of hugs and hope, for me, it was war. A brutal, bloody escape from the chains she'd forged around me since the day I was born.
If you love stories of resilience, reclaiming justice with style, and rediscovering your worth, hit that subscribe button for Graceful Revenge now. Don't forget to turn on notifications so you never miss a video. Let's dive into the power of elegant revenge and life's deepest lessons together.
My name is Sasha, and my life has never been my own. Every step, every victory belonged to Vivian. To the world, she was perfection incarnate. Elegant, magnetic, a mother who could do no wrong. She spun tales of my brilliance at her flawless dinner parties, her voice dripping with pride, as if she'd sculpted me from clay. But behind the mask, she was a suffocating force. My clothes, my posture, my every breath. She molded me into her trophy, her masterpiece. My perfect grades? Her triumph, not mine. Every dime she spent on me, a loan with crushing interest I'd owe her forever. I wasn't her daughter, I was her mirror, reflecting the flawless image she craved. So when I landed a full-ride scholarship to my dream college, her reaction was as predictable as it was chilling. "This is a blessing for us," she purred, her smile tight and predatory. "No loans to drag us down, and when you start cashing those checks, I'll finally escape that soul-sucking job." She spoke like my future was her personal ATM, my success just another thread in her web of control. I was 17, but I wasn't blind. I'd spent years decoding her, every calculated word, every guilt trip. She'd never stop devouring me unless I fought back. So I played her game, nodded, smiled, let her think she'd won, while I forged my rebellion in secret. Step 1. I fed her vague half-truths about my scholarship. She thought she'd dip her claws into my funds, but I'd locked them away. Step 2. I opened a bank account in another state, untouchable, a fortress against her greed. Her subtle threats, her offhand claims on my future earnings. I recorded them, hoarding evidence like ammunition. Step 4. I bided my time. Graduation night was my stage. Vivian spared no expense, turning it into her personal gala. Over 100 guests, crystal flutes clinking, praise raining down on the mother who'd raised a prodigy. She soaked it up, radiant, as if she'd aced my exams herself. Then she strode to the center of the room, her voice booming with authority. "My daughter's success is our family's victory," she proclaimed. "And naturally, her first paycheck belongs to us." She thrust out her hand, expecting me to kneel and offer my lifeblood. I grinned, a spark igniting in my chest. "Actually, I've got a surprise." On cue, security stormed in, boots thudding, radios crackling. The crowd gasped, glasses trembling in their hands. Vivian's face drained of color. "Guards?" At a graduation party, a guest hissed, panic rippling through the room. This wasn't a party anymore. It was her reckoning. While she'd been orchestrating her spectacle, I'd been plotting my liberation. A month prior, I'd sat with a lawyer, spilling years of her tyranny, the money she siphoned and the mind games, the suffocation. But the dagger I wielded was this: the house we lived in. It was never hers. It belonged to my father, Marcus, and when he died, he willed it to me. She had no claim, no ground to stand on. Now, she had 30 days to get out, or face the law. Silence crashed over the room like a tidal wave. Guests froze, some slinking toward the exits. Vivian's jaw dropped, then snapped shut. For once, her silver tongue failed her. A guard stepped forward, his voice like steel. "This is a legal eviction. Refuse and the police will drag you out." She was mute, shattered. I walked out that night, diploma in one hand, freedom in the other, leaving chaos in my wake. Vivian didn't fade quietly. She wailed, clawed at the air, then stormed my new apartment, hammering the door until security hauled her off. Defeated, she slunk to a distant aunt's house. She still calls, begs. I ignore every plea. I've built my own life, my own wealth, my own rules, and no one will chain me again. I thought she'd surrender. I was wrong. The retaliation began with a flood of venom, anonymous messages from burner accounts, branding me a traitor, a monster who'd abandoned her saintly mother. Then my bank account pinged. Someone tried to breach it, traced back to my hometown. I knew her fingerprints. I switched banks, fortified my defenses, and kept moving. Then the police arrived, badges glinting under my porch light. "We've got a report you defrauded your mother," one said, eyes narrow. "She says you stole her home and tossed her out like trash." I nearly laughed in their faces. Instead, I handed over my arsenal. The deed, Marcus's will, the eviction papers, proof I was clean. They skimmed the files, irritation replacing suspicion. "She's pulling this stunt again," one grumbled. "Total waste of time." They left, but Vivian wasn't finished. Neither was I. Settling into my new job miles away, I thought I'd escaped, until HR called, their tone laced with unease. "A woman claiming to be your mom contacted us," my boss said. "She's screaming you're unhinged, a thief who robbed your family, and we shouldn't trust you." The words slammed into me, my vision blurring. This wasn't just guilt, tripping. It was sabotage, a dagger aimed at my career, my new life. My hands shook, but I forced calm. "Do you buy it?" I asked, voice taut. He shook his head. "No, but we had to log it. Legal crap." I hung up, heart hammering. Vivian was escalating, and I had to end her before she torched everything. I dialed my uncle, Theo, Vivian's older brother, the only one who'd ever defied her. After a tense silence, he sighed. "She's desperate. Desperate people get reckless." "I need her stopped," I said, dread gnawing at me. His next words froze my blood. "She's shacked up with some creep," he said. "Met him online. Older, shady, not local. She spilled everything, your job, your address, your life. He's egging her on." My stomach plummeted. This wasn't just Vivian anymore. There was a stranger in the shadows, and they were hunting me together. I should have run. I should have let it die. But I couldn't. I drove back to my hometown. Not for peace, not for closure, but to crush this nightmare. Her new home was a rotting shack in a crime-riddled slum, a far cry from her old delusions of grandeur. I parked a block away, pulse racing, watching from the shadows. An hour dragged by, my mind a storm of plans and fears. Then the door creaked open, and Vivian emerged, chin high, oozing arrogance, like she'd already beaten me. Her eyes locked on me, and her smug mask cracked for a heartbeat. "Stop this," I said, voice steady despite my trembling fists. "Your game's done. She cackled, low and cruel. "Oh, darling, you can't erase me that easily." The door groaned again, and out stepped Jasper, tall, lean, eyes like a hawk's glinting with menace. He sized me up, a predator circling prey, and the air turned thick with danger. This wasn't about cash or control anymore. It was a vendetta, darker and deadlier than I'd imagined. Vivian was puppeteer, but Jasper? He was the muscle, and the way he stared, cold, unblinking, sent ice down my spine. I should have bolted. Instead, I stood my ground. Something about him screamed wrong. And for the first time, Vivian wasn't the puppet master. That terrified me more than anything. Jasper didn't speak at first, just watched me, his gaze a scalpel peeling me apart. Then he smirked, slow and venomous. "So, you're the cash cow," he sneered, voice oily with contempt. Vivian flinched, shooting him a glare he ignored, his focus locked on me. My fists balled tight. "I'm not your piggy bank," I spat, unwavering. He laughed, a jagged, guttural sound. "Yeah, you don't have to be." He tossed an envelope at me. I snatched it midair, dread pooling in my gut. "A little heads up," he said, grin widening. "Read it before you make bigger mistakes." I tore it open, breath catching. Photos spilled out. Me at work, in my car, outside my apartment, snapped from shadows. My heart slammed against my ribs. "You've been stalking me," I said, voice rising. Jasper's smirk held firm. "Chill, you're still breathing." I glanced at Vivian. Her face was ashen, a crack in her armor, fear, maybe regret. She'd always ruled me, but now Jasper held the reins and she was unraveling. I forced a grin, hiding my terror. "This supposed to scare me?" I flung the envelope back at him, his smugness flickered. "What's this, Vivian?" "Your new lapdog, a stalker with a dollar store camera." Jasper's eyes narrowed, fury sparking. "Watch it," he growled, "or what?" I stepped closer, voice ablade. "More creepy pics? Another fake sob story, or something dirtier?"
His jaw tightened. I'd hit a nerve. Guys like him loathed being clocked. I pressed harder. "Keep this up, stalking, threats, and I'll bury you in court. You'll choke on the paperwork." I spun to Vivian. She stood mute, a statue of defeat. My lip curled. "Of course. Bet you copied my key before you left, huh?" Pathetic. I jabbed a finger at her. Locks are changing. She didn't fight back. Instead, she dug into her tattered purse and slid a thick envelope across the cracked porch. I stared, wary. "What's this?" Her voice was low, heavy. "The truth." A chill slithered through me. Her tone wasn't defiance, it was dread. I grabbed it, hands unsteady, and ripped it open. Old, brittle papers spilled out. Legal docs, my name scrawled across them, but beneath it, a stranger's surname. My pulse roared. I rifled through birth records, custody forms, court orders, then a name I'd never seen. My hands shook, vision swimming. Vivian's breath hitched. "I thought I could bury it," she whispered. "Fix it before you knew." I met her gaze, throat tight. "What is this?" She faltered, then rasped, "You're not mine." The world lurched. I gripped the railing, fighting to breathe. "That's a lie," I choked, but doubt clawed at me. She looked away. "I'm sorry, I should have told you years ago." Her confession crushed me. "You stole me?" She recoiled, guilt carving her face. "Not like that." But I knew. It was exactly like that. Since then, both Saffron and I have had no contact with Vesper. The rest of the family, who were also present during my baby shower, have spread the word around, and no one wants anything to do with Vesper now. Torin has threatened Vesper to stay as far away from me as possible. I am still unable to comprehend the lengths Vesper can go to try to sabotage my life. 8 months later, our baby was born healthy and is doing well. Kale and I are great. Saffron, Torin, and Cassian have visited us several times, and we all meet up regularly. None of us are in contact with Vesper. Cassian is currently separated from her. It turns out that after he found out and confronted her about everything, she refused to apologize to any of us and tried to justify her behavior. He finally realized that if she could treat me, her own daughter, in such a horrible way, then there was no guarantee she wouldn't do the same to him or anyone else she claimed to care about. Her selfishness knows no bounds, and he understood that he was better off without her.